What's up, everybody? Welcome to your kind of funny God of War Spoilercast, Gamescast special, whatever the hell we're actually putting in the title. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside Tim Gettys.
Let Tim host.
Thank you very much. I'm happy you're here.
I'm happy you're here.
I appreciate that you beat. Oh, is this a new jacket?
No.
Oh, it looked like it was velvet for a second.
$20, Amazon.com. Cool jacket. Just look for it.
How you feeling? You had a marathon God of War this weekend.
And it was a good time.
Okay,
friend.
good.
That's good.
We'll talk about that in a second. Over here, my Hispanic heartthrob, Andy Cortez. Oh, I wasn't expecting a grito this early in the morning.
It's early, man. But you got to get warmed up,
Gotta
dude.
get the energy up.
And over there, man of the hour from Sony Santa Monica, Cory Barlog.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you
It's
for
so
coming.
wonderful to be here.
I know you haven't talked about this game anywhere, so I'm thankful we were able to get this exclusive. Have you come in and do this with
Fantastic.
us?
Finally, we can grill him. Jesus.
I know, right? No more of the side glances when you're trying to. You got to look
Right.
over the PR person what you can and can't say. You can say
I
whatever
will
you want
still
now.
be
Gloves off.
22% evasive.
Yeah,
Right.
all right, fine.
So
If you
we
didn't
are-
know, ladies and gentlemen, this is a kind of funny spoiler cast where we're going to spoil all of God of War. The gloves are off. If you haven't played through God of War and beaten God of War, you have no business watching this video or listening to
away.
this podcast. Go away.
This is not the spoiler cast you're looking
It'll
for.
be here when you're done. It'll wait for you. It doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't go sour. Andy, does the milk go sour when we're talking about videos?
Never, Greg Miller.
Never. That's what I'm talking about over there. That's some quality improv right there. Dude. That was your chance to stop and get out. All right, Joey. Oh, Joey hasn't beaten it, so I want to make sure she can't hear us. She's I don't know why she came in so early. I thought she'd come in late. Instead, she came in.
She wanted to make sure she didn't come in during the middle of it and then having to do.
Yeah.
You gotta leave.
This is it. We're starting right now. You got to put on your earmuffs. You got.
put everything on an actual trigger,
Headphones on.
Okay. Then get it. Go, because now I'm gonna start. It's gonna start right now.
It's happening.
Bang on the wall when you're ready. She screamed. I'm sure.
I
You might have
heard
fallen
about
over.
the bang.
Okay. All right, so I want to start it right now.
All right. It's real.
You're gonna fucking tell me this kid's Loki the whole time.
You're going to tell
You're
me.
gonna sit there with a straight fucking
Right.
face and do this to me.
Yes.
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 Good episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
And that's a wrap.
There was a moment towards the end. It wasn't the very end. It's when you're going up. It's after the big climax and stuff, and you're going up the mountain, like you know where things are going, or so you think. And then you start seeing the things on the wall. And I looked over at my girlfriend who'd been watching me play the whole time, and I'm like, that motherfucker's Loki. Now I thought in the beginning,
When you looked at the wall, you saw that. Nice.
the stranger I thought was Loki.
You thought
in the very beginning.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely thought that he was Loki as well.
And I was like, oh, here we go. We're gonna get this reveal, and it didn't happen. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then it was after the credits, we were walking down, and it happened. I'm like, thank you, fucking thank you. And
said-
she was like,
I
Spike
saw
the
Baldur
controller.
and I was like, let me Google maybe in a different sort of mythology, he really is Loki. Like, I just could have sworn he was. And then the big reveal came and it was awesome and chills and goosebumps and everything like
Oh,
that.
that's amazing.
Fantastic.
Of course, we asked the audience to write in to
Yeah.
Kind of Funny. We've already
course.
shut down the spoiler cast thing, so you
course.
can't write it now. It's too late. You should have been looking us in on Twitter. But
sleep on
Keylock
that.
wrote in and said this. So I couldn't resist another. Well, I didn't put the first one in Keylock, so don't worry. But was it intentional to avoid trickster powers for Atreus that would hint at him being Loki? I mean, Nordic lore states he's the reason for Baldur's death, so I guess that kind of hints at it enough.
Kinda.
But was there any foreshadowing you wish you could have done for Atreus, but felt like you didn't because it would have given it away?
Oh, we did a lot of it in there. A
Really?
lot.
Tell me more, because that's the thing is like I come in like
You
an
don't know
idiot.
what you missed.
I'm a
Yeah.
big moron. What I know about Norse mythology is the Marvel Cinematic Universe of
Right.
Thor, and I'm like, oh,
You're not
okay.
a moron though. Like Norse mythology is not widely known. I didn't know anything about it. Like I knew what Marvel and Lord of the Rings taught me.
Yeah.
Right? But when I started researching this, I found it was a very confusing web. Right? Because there are multiple translations. There are scholars that dispute so many aspects of it, whether or not several characters are actually one character, the lineage of things, and you also have kind of the Christianization to pull people away from paganism. So there was a lot of sort of changes to the mythology over the years. So it is a very confusing thing. But in the game, there's one that I'm not going to tell anybody because I want people to find it. I think it's amazing. But when you find it, you'll be like, son of a bitch.
It was there the whole time.
It was there the whole time. But
Yeah.
I mean, this one was more a deep layer. You got to look for it. But when you have the demigod reveal, when he actually tells his son that he is a god, what is the first animal he asks if he can turn into?
A bird? No.
Can I turn into an animal? Can I turn into a wolf? Loki associated with the wolves, the children. So that was one.
Okay.
We also have one we didn't translate, but we sort of indicate towards, so that when he's talking to the world serpent in the language that we've sort of created for him because it was
very loud and booming.
Yeah, booming
Yeah,
and loud.
bizarre.
He actually talks about how he recognizes him. So, and that's why he says, curious. Nothing. Never mind.
Yeah.
So that one obviously is harder for people to get. And then, him being the instigator for the death of Balder.
Sure.
Him being kind of associated with that. And, like I said, the first one, there are two things at the beginning of the game. One that will tell you almost everything, if you look. And then one.
What is it? Tell me what it is. It's the Spoilercast.
But that one I want to save for people because that is like, you got to find it and then go, seriously.
Tom Hiddleston pops out and he winks at the camera.
Hiddleston did one line.
Good, little man.
And he does the smile with the tongue there.
Super villain goals. So the Loki thing, interestingly, when we first wrote the story, he was not Loki, right?
Oh, really?
It was, we were still trying to figure out, I hadn't figured out the kid's name until after E3 2016. But after I had figured out the name and I gave the writers the story that he tells at the end about Atreus, the warrior that he fought with.
Which was, by the way, such an awesome fucking payoff.
Yes.
Where he finishes and Atreus like, wow, you told a good story. Right. You can tell a good story.
And that was, I had been agonizing over what we were going to name this kid and just mostly stalling and procrastinating for a long time. And
Pokey?
I knew, and I had a bunch of different names, but it had to mean something, but it had to mean something more personal to Kratos. Right?
Sure.
And I wrote a couple of different stories that were sort of Kratos' past experiences he had in different battles. And then the one that ended up sort of rising to the top was the one that I was like, all right, I think this one is it. And we had made a huge list of names and everybody was very worried about Atreus being associated with a god. And I said, actually, that's kind of cool, right? Because I think a lot of people will see the name and then assume, ooh, I know what this is. They'll look it up and they'll try to associate with that. But you can see that it's more about Kratos having the personal connection. People say, oh, why didn't you name him Deimos? But I mean, if you know the story of what's going on, that's a pretty painful memory for him. So to look at his son and say Deimos every time would be way too painful for him, I think, to keep bringing that up. And then he would never name it after a hero or a god. He doesn't idolize any of them. But to idolize somebody that actually stayed positive, that had hope, right, is so antithetical to Kratos, but actually so much of giving you an insight into his inner life, right? That there is a desire, that little bit of hope that he didn't give to mankind, that he left inside of there, but locked way deep inside. So, but after that, the writers had come into my office and said, I have an idea, I have a pitch. And the pitch they gave me was literally the exact line that we ended up using, which was like, okay, so he goes and reads the mural, they go spread the ashes, and they're walking back, and Atreus looks at him and says, okay, so I get it. I'm a god part giant. But the thing that was confusing is they kept getting my name wrong on the mural. They kept calling me Loki. And this was exactly how Matt Sophos had pitched it. And I was like, where have you been my whole life? Why didn't I come up with this? Right? I was like, instantly, we have to do this. 100%, right? Because it started fitting into the overarching theme of I wanted Atreus to be way more connected to this world. And, there's so much history behind Loki that is what we're going to tell in the future. Right? And our perspective on it is like everything. We've sort of taken a bit of the myth and then really changed it to what works best for the overarching story. It still respects, I think, the core material, but it says this is our take. Whereas Marvel takes their own take, we've kind of had the similar.
From a From a game development standpoint, how early on was that decision made to call him Loki?
It was several years in. I mean, we had a lot of stuff shot. Yeah,
it boggles my mind.
But that's the beautiful part about working with not only a team but an amazing team is that being open to really great ideas that just come out of nowhere, right? And we shot a bunch of stuff, so there was still there's an impact, and there's a little hair pulled out from producers that when I say, all right, this is what we're gonna do, but we had already started subconsciously peppering some of these things in, right? We had already been looking at his ability to summon creatures. Right, is a bit of the beginnings of that. But as with every character in this universe, I want to look at it slightly differently. I think Loki simply being the trickster is fantastic if that's where he ends up at. If you find that his arrival at that personality, that sort of description, comes because he went through a very circuitous route, that he didn't begin that way, that perhaps it's a defense mechanism. Perhaps it is what the world made him, right? Baldur is a perfect example of, in the myth, he was the beautiful, adored one, right? Yeah. He was the touched one, the one who felt like, this is the aspirational goal of Baldur. He is loved by everybody, right? But I think looking at him as a tragic figure, right? A figure who's not a villain, but who the world put him in that place. And it was love that actually took him there. It was his mother's love that actually pushed him towards that, because she took over his decision-making, right? And that's like a fantastic cautionary tale for Kratos, who begins the game trying to take over the decision-making for his child, right? Because his history. Yeah. He believes, hey, look, if I could have never known about any of this crap, would my life have been better? No, but he doesn't know that. He's still figuring all that stuff out. He's got to figure it out on that path. And I think that, to me, is fertile sort of character development. That is amazing.
Well, sure. I mean, that's what terrifies me about Atreus / Loki now, is the fact that knowing how Loki's tale usually goes, and not really knowing, but knowing that he turns into Tom Hiddleston and he keeps doing all these other things. But he turns
into story about the snake. It's a whole deal.
Right. What a great movie. You got to watch Thor Ragnarok. I'm sure you've never seen it.
I haven't had a chance yet to see it.
Really?
I am super excited. Yeah, we don't really get a lot of, like my wife and I watch mostly TV shows because we have about an hour to an hour and a half.
Sure.
She's totally fine with pausing a movie and watching the last 10 minutes the next day. I can't do it.
No.
I gotta watch a movie in one sitting.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of conflict between us because of that.
That's the biggest marriage problem.
Life.
That's my life in a nutshell. I love you, Gia.
That's what scares me about going forward, is that I love the game period, obviously. I've told you that before. But I love how Atreus's hope and heart he's so pure in the way of like, well, yeah, we're gonna help people, that's what we do, like right. And every time it comes around where he wants to do one of the side missions and help one of the ghosts or whatever, and Kratos is like, why do you want to do this? And he's like, well, we have to, they're in need. And like, you see Kratos waver sometimes on it and feel a little bit for it, but also always be trying to teach that hard lesson of, you're going to get let down, like don't have expectations and you'll never be. To get to the end and find out that he is Loki, it worries me then for what you're going to continue to do in this franchise one day, of going in and taking him to a darker side and what he's going to see. And even obviously the illusions here of like, I know how hard it is for Kratos to admit to Atreus who he is and what he's done, and that he did kill his own father, because there are so many lines before that of like, when we hear other mythos about it, or you hear other stuff in the Norse mythology, and Atreus is like, that's crazy, why would he kill his own dad? And you see like Kratos just kind of like fretting his seat for a second.
Yeah. And then seeing that last panel on the wall towards the end, it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Like, can they avoid that? I don't know. What could it mean?
You tell us what it means.
A lot of big questions.
What's the last panel on the wall?
I would take it as that Atreus is going to kill Kratos.
That's what you think, yeah?
Yeah, it seems pretty.
Is that what it means?
Seems pretty on the nose there.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially Kratos being like, I'm going to show you that one. Like, you got to keep moving, kid.
Yeah. That one is a really good one for the audience to determine what does it mean to them, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because it is sort of a little bit of that mystery of like, okay, I am not Fae. So therefore, I can't clearly see the future. I take at face value what I'm seeing. What does it mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting sort of potential future.
I think it's interesting to ask what else it could mean.
Right. What else could it mean? There's
him laying him to rest. Right. You know what I mean? He didn't do the killing blow, but he's right there at the end.
But he was there.
Yeah.
First off, hats to the environment team and the art team. It just everything's
they are absolutely
incredible.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And all of the different awesome set pieces to look at were just beautiful, right? But for some reason, what really made me just my jaw drop was getting to the top, looking over at Jotunheim and seeing all of the giants sprawled over the mountains. Just phenomenal. Like I'd assume that the concept art was very, very similar to what the final product could have been, and like, it's beautiful. Just fantastic.
I mean, the concept is always that fantastic start, and emotionally, I think it was the springboard. But it always kind of modifies. You bring in other people, and they start taking a little bit of their own perspective on it, and just elevating it so far beyond. And something else I want to say at the end point, because the interesting thing that was set up when the realization of the Atreus is going to be Loki had come up. This aspect of the sort of B story, the B story that was really deep layer that I still hadn't, I think, coalesced in my head, started to bubble up to the top. This idea of identity, Identity's been such a big part of this franchise, but it's just not been a part that we've really delved super deep in. And I think for Kratos, there's this really cool aspect of he desires very deeply a different identity, right? He's been sort of given by his parents and the circumstance, the identity that he has. And then deep down inside, there is a desire, I think, for I wish things were different. And now at the end of the game, Atreus is given an opportunity, right? An opportunity that really Faye orchestrated all along, that she sort of assuaged to the idea that, look, I want to call him Loki, you want to call him Atreus. I'm okay with doing that because I don't know if he's ready to be called Loki. And that when he's given the opportunity to see that he has one identity that he's become comfortable with, and that identity is attached now to finally connecting with his father, he's presented this other identity. And he's given that crossroads to say, like that point that when we go to college and we can reinvent ourselves, who do we want to be? Who are we?
I have an Australian accent. Nobody knows that.
Right. And you hold it back, right? And then maybe you should just let it fly free, right?
Yeah.
Throw a little Men at Work, a little Nicole Kidman.
Absolutely. Star quarterback in high school.
Right.
You guys, you don't look it up though, but you guys know that.
Was it hard to show restraint with characters like Thor and Odin and Loki? Because they're mentioned a lot in the game, but then you obviously don't really get too much of them.
I mean, we had the thing in the beginning where the first draft that was written with me, Rich Gobert, and Shane Leesgang, I realized after we had put a bunch of work into this thing, 8 months or so, we were writing the second game. You know, there was a really cool idea that we sort of sprung from, but it wasn't supporting the father and son story. It wasn't supporting sort of the core concept of family and how we interact. And I had to make that hard decision of saying, like, look, I know we put a lot of work in this, but we're writing the second game. We can't do this, right? If we overwhelm ourselves with the sort of widely known characters, they overshadow, I think, the concept that we're doing. And part of the reason of choosing Norse myth was the isolation, the ability to focus on these two characters and put them in this amazing world, but also not make it feel like you're doing a ton of, oh yeah, I know all these characters, and they become the stars, right? It was the conflict we always had with the blades in the previous games, that when you add a new weapon, that new weapon can't overshadow the blades. The blades are sort of the iconic main weapon. So we always struggle with that. And I think that helped me when I realized, like, okay, this sucks. Like not sucks because the writers did anything wrong. They did exactly what we were trying to do. It's just I was wrong. I was steering them in the wrong direction. And that was a hard shift, right? It caused a lot of conflict. But in the end, it was for the better. Like it made things better. So it made us realize, like, okay, the presence of these characters being felt is more powerful, right? That their impact, that you never really see them, or when you do see them, it's very minimal, and it sets something up to say, all right, you've told me the beginning of this story. Now I'm ready to buckle up and get ready for the next one.
And that was the thing I took away from it. You know, when we were describing it on the review with Jared, I was talking about how the easiest way for me to pitch it to the people who hadn't played it yet was it reminded me a lot of a play, where we had this cast of characters that wasn't hundreds of characters long, but people came in and went out and came back in, and I knew more about them when they came back in based on this. It felt, in terms of a character roster and motivations, I kept saying it felt small and intimate in a good way. Yeah. In the fact that I had relationships with these people that, you know, when the stranger shows up the first time and we fight him and I break his neck and throw him off, there's that thing of like, he'll probably be back, but then for so long he's not talked about on this journey. Or I'm just like, no, he's dead. And then no, he's back and it is this. And we started getting into it that by the time we got to the ultimate fight there, right? And it's me and Baldur fighting, Freya's yelling, all this stuff's happening. I had forgotten the fact that when I started this game, I was so sure of like, all right, killed the stranger. Now I'm going to move on. Eventually Thor is going to show up. We'll fight him and it'll all end with me fighting Odin. You know what I mean? I'm seeing Odin's ravens. Of course, I'm going to run into him at the end of this. When it actually stopped and it finished and I got to the top of the mountain, I was like, wow, what a great, oh wait, hold on. Like none of the things I thought that were going to happen happened. It was just in quotes, this one story.
Amazing.
Odin's like, quit killing my ravens, man.
Hey, man, I just want to see. I just want to know what's going on.
Even the shopkeepers, though. Like, I love that, like, the entire cast of characters is 8 characters, including Thor's kids, you know? And it's like, I feel like all of them I felt for in some way. And I loved the coming back to them constantly. And like, it was a cool thing. And I love that I agree with you where as I was going up, especially at the end of the mountain, I was like, wow, there's so much shit that I thought I was going to do that I didn't.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a good thing because me and Kevin were talking before we beat it. We're like, oh, so we're going to go to Asgard.
Yeah.
Like that's going to happen. Sure.
Yeah.
We didn't. And like on top of that, when you go into Tears, little shrine,
palace.
Yeah.
TYR, and you're looking around, it's like then you start getting all these hints of like other mythologies, and I'm
Yeah.
like, are you about to drop some like Chinese shit on me? Like that would be nuts.
Right.
What was that, Kevin, back there?
Is the Egyptian Eye of Ra?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
the helmet, the Egyptian helmet that Atreus is trying on in the treasure room, like all of it is like little subtle
love it.
indicators. It helps build the mythology of Tyr being this sort of beloved god that began a lot of the Norse myth before the Aesir gods came in and kind of kicked them out. But he was connected to a lot of other things. There's things in the myth that show there was connections, and whether or not this is legit or if it is literally just somebody expanding on the stories, that there was connections between Roman gods and Norse gods, right? Even a small connection between that shows that, all right, precursor to the Viking era where they were sailing all everywhere was potentially the gods and the monsters actually connecting to other geographic locations. So
How much of a pain in the ass was the single shot camera? I can't imagine having to sculpt a game around this single idea.
yeah, it was a lot of attention and a lot of stress in the beginning. And then I passed that stress on to Doria Rossi and everybody else on the amazing cinematics team to deal with. And then, got passed on to gameplay and G Troff and everybody else on the engineering side to figure out how are we going to connect all this stuff, right? It was a nonstop sort of learning experience for us to find new tricks. And many, many, many conversations of why don't we just cut here? Well, it's fine, just cut here. Like,
Yeah.
even when we go and do white fades, the white fades are solely because we've edited something out and we have to travel a little bit further. So we just don't want to show that traveling. It's like, pacing wise, it's just not that good. The camera still doesn't cut. It simply moves to that location. We just kind of cover it up just a little bit because of sort of late game edits that we had to do. But at no point do we ever feel like we have to cut, except for the battle I lost in the beginning, which was, if you saw that stream, you saw that Kratos was like pulling the axe off and like slotting in runes inside the game. That was the original intent of all the UI, was everything was going to be in the game. But as we started realizing all the upgrading you needed to do and everything you need to do, it just felt like it's just unrealistic. Like that's a battle that I don't think it's worthwhile for anybody to fight on the first one because we have so many things to do. Like maybe there's something we do on the next one to kind of eliminate going to the menu screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's.
We need Brock and Sindri back. They don't do this to us.
Get rid of them.
We need to watch them put those fucking runes in those slots, guys.
Oh yeah, I love those guys. They are amazing.
A great arc for them too.
I was gonna say, and that's I think one of the other super impressive things about this game is that you made me give a shit about these brother blacksmiths.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People
I made
who are
you
just
care
there to
about the
take my
store.
stuff and make my stuff better and get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually cared about reuniting them, and Atreus cared about it, and that made me care more.
And that was the original sort of edict that I said. Any character involved in here is going to be a sort of reflection, or a mirror to either teach them something, or they will teach someone else something. So that they each impact the world impacts them, and that there is no ancillary characters. We're talking about even some of the spirits that they run into around the lake. They learn something, right? They learn a little bit about the reality of letting go. When they run into Gulveg, right? And Gulveg is the perfect example of, don't believe people when they promise you something that in your heart is unrealistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
And I
Kratos
think-
trying to teach that as he goes through, or as they go through.
And
right?
everybody has a lesson. I think initially when I talked to people, I said it was the Resident Evil. What are you buying? What are you selling?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I said, but imagine if you actually understood what was going on with that person.
Why is
and
he
that
dressed in that giant black coat?
yeah,
How is he everywhere?
yeah. How is he everywhere?
Where's his
What's he
accent
going on?
from?
Yeah.
It's funny you say that too because I got Resident Evil 4 vibes from this game,
Yeah.
like mainly from the pacing of the gameplay and the pacing of the story as well. Where I feel the thing this game does best is go from small battles to big battles, but both of them feeling equally as epic and equally as important as you go through.
yeah.
And I think the camera really helped with all that. And it's like this might be one of the most well-paced games I've ever played, and Resident Evil 4 is another one I would put up there
That's
as
beautiful.
well.
Thank you. I mean,
Yeah, I agree. I think I was telling Greg this, like, because Greg obviously got the game before all of us did, and then
I'm more important than everyone.
we got it a few days later.
They got my scraps.
And I don't think anybody had started it up, but I had maybe for the first night played like the first 3 hours, and I was just blown away. And I was talking as soon as I got to work, I was like, He was like, God of War. I was like, God of War, dude. And
And that's literally all you said. That was the whole conversation.
Walked away with God of War.
And then went to work.
I got in my car and I left. Never to be seen.
You need any party mode.
And we looked and we talked about it, just how in the beginning of the game, before it opens up to say, hey, go explore and do your thing.
In the Lake of the Nine, yeah.
Yeah, it does feel just so impeccably paced, going from story to conflict to more story to conflict, and it never feels like I get this feeling in a lot of open world games where you're sort of let free and you sort of lose momentum in a way.
Yep.
And I didn't feel that at all. So hats off to whoever the fuck's idea that was.
The credits were long. There's someone in there.
Everybody was involved in getting that to where it was. That initial concept was sort of when your parents taught you how to ride a bike. They're holding on to you and running along with you a little bit, wobbly handlebars, right? If they let go too early, you're going to wobble and you're going to crash, right? And it is that trick of figuring out when is the perfect time to let go. And we went back and forth. I had many people coming and saying, 45 minutes, we better be in the exploration. I was like, it's too early. And they're like, I find 60 minutes. I'm like, no. I'm like, we need to set everything up. You need to care about all these sort of characters beforehand. You need to establish everything. And then you need to get to the point where you think, oh, well, this is all the game is.
Yep.
That is the magic point. It's the same thing with Baldur, is that the trick doesn't work if you immediately show Baldur again. Like, we had a lot of feedback during the playtest to say like, oh, the main villain disappears and I don't hear from him for a while. That was the point. He wasn't supposed to be the main villain. There is no main villain. He is simply another person in this world who has a tragic story that intersects, right? And it is a fantastic story of mistaken identity. Mm-hmm. Him showing up at your house and being as vague as he is being, right? Because he's just so certain, is you thinking, all right, Kratos is all about me, right? Everything's all about me. But the reality is it has nothing to do with him, right? And you look at the rest of the world as a whole and you're like, wow, it really doesn't, right? He is small in this world. He is not the focal point. He is not the thing that everybody's searching out. His actions create attention to him. So he and his son become a focal point. But yeah, that beginning was hard earned, I think, for us, that we really had to go back and forth a lot.
It works so well, and it's even the reveal. I feel so like for me, I went and played the 2.5 hours down at Sony Santa Monica, right?
Yep.
Awesome stuff. Really enjoyed it. Come back, tell everybody how amazing it is. But I always thought it was an interesting place to cut when we cut, because it cuts right when we come back with like the mystical warthog back to the witch's
You
tree.
see Charlie.
Yeah. And
So you had got to the fight already? You'd gone to the Baldur fight?
oh yeah, that's so
cool.
early. Yeah,
Okay.
But I got through all of that, and then when I played through all of it again at home. When you leave the tree is when they're like, all right, here's the compass. And I was like, oh, and I texted Aram, our PR guy, and I was just like, hey, I'm really still awesome. Now I see why you cut where you cut, because you didn't want me to know that. And then playing further, and when you get to Lake of the Nine, and then a little bit further when it's like, all right, cool. Now it's really open.
Yep.
Now it really is go do what you want. And I texted him again. I'm like, I was wrong to even say that was what you were hiding. Like it's just you gave the breadcrumb of this, cool, and then to go there and then finally blow it up even longer, further out, to be like, this is what everything is. It's like, wow, I did not expect this.
Born in paranoia as well. Like, that wasn't the plan. The plan was to stop at the serpent reveal. And it always felt weird to me. I didn't know why, but I had this feeling in the pit of my stomach constantly, like, am I doing the right thing? And I'm like, no, I got to trust it. This is the idea. And I think it was probably 2 weeks before the preview event that I was like, just came to the office and said, no, we can't do it. We have to cut earlier. And we don't have a way to do it. That was the problem, is that so much of this game was right at the very end, getting everything done. We did not have the bandwidth to actually create a demo stop. So it was basically like, all right, well, the cinematic is so long that we're able to kind of say, all right, well, we can always stop people. We can see the cinematic starts and then like go over to them and tap them on the shoulders, simply because we didn't have the bandwidth for any programmers to put in an actual demo stop. And I kind of just ruffled some feathers and went in and it's like, this is what you got to do. And everyone's like, well, wait a minute. We're planning on doing this. We got to show people more of the game. They would need to see this bigger. I'm like, no. This is the surprise. This is a surprise that we want people to have when they're actually reviewing it, to go, oh my God, right? That this is, I didn't realize it was going to open up like this. And after passionately pleading to several people and everybody kind of going like, no, I think this is right. Yeah, I get it. It makes sense. I had to then figure out how we're going to do it. And Jeet Shroff, one of the lead gameplay engineer, had figured out the idea that, all right, what we're going to do is just introduce a crash. So when it says the demo's over, he just introduced a crash specifically at that point. So it's like the most ghetto version of like a demo ending ever.
That's awesome.
But it's still like, that is, I think, the testament of like, one, trusting your instincts and being open even at the last second to change something.
Yeah.
Like that, I think, is the hallmark of what we do, but also, like our homies over at Naughty Dog, man, those guys are,
Hacks.
they are absolutely.
Oh no, they're good. I'm sorry.
They're absolutely wonderful. Look, these guys are willing to throw out things at the last second. They're willing to go re-examine something right at the final bell. And it's inspirational for me when I hear some of the stories of what they've done and make those calls to kind of go like, all right, it gives me a little bit more confidence to say like, I need to trust this. I need to trust it, even though if everybody, all 300 people are looking at you going, you're an idiot, don't do this. Like if it feels like the right thing to do, you got to trust it. And then if it fails, at least it's your fault, right? As opposed to, oh man, I wish I would have done this,
Yeah. Have you or other people on the team had conversations or felt offended by the reaction to God of War PS4? Because I feel a lot of it is people like me of like, hey, Kratos always sucked as a character. I was never into him because of this, that, or the other. This game is awesome. And I'll just keep throwing the heat on myself of me being like, I look at this game the same way I looked at Horizon last year, where
That's a great game.
I've known the Guerrilla folks forever. I've covered PlayStation for more than a decade now, and I've known Herman forever, and it's always broken my heart that these awesome people didn't get the love, the limelight, all of this like attention in the great scores until, and then Horizon came and suddenly it was like, whoa, look at this, these Guerrilla guys had, I'm like, no, they've had stuff for years. Yeah. It's the same. I feel like there's something here with that too, where you guys, Sony Santa Monica, have definitely stepped up, I feel, a level in terms of the way people think of your studio now, and the same way people thought of Guerrilla, and the same way people thought of Naughty Dog with Uncharted 2 when that really came around.
I don't think, no, not offended, but like, I think we have a fairly good sense of self to understand where we were. I always compare it to the idea that our early games were in our college years. The idea of we're taking on the industry, you want to make the best thing. And I fault myself for not being, I think, at that place in my career to look deeper into something, to actually see the forest for the trees. Like I know that everything seems to happen at the time it's supposed to happen, right? But I look at it as like Janusz Kaminski. He is a director of photography whose first film was Cool as Ice, starring Vanilla Ice.
Sure, yeah, of course.
He also then went on to DP Schindler's List and won an Academy Award. So I feel like we all, in our journey,
we all have our Cool as Ice.
We all have our Cool as Ice, and I don't necessarily think our early games were Cool as Ice. I think they were more of our beginnings, right?
I think my Cool as Ice is working here at Kind of Funny, and then eventually
you're eventually going to go off your Schindler's
List.
It's going to be amazing. Right? I thought your Cool as Ice was being a football player earlier with an Australian accent.
That too.
Right? So yeah, I think that for us, our past defines who we are, and we are infinitely proud of it. I don't think any of us would go back and put flashlights in a soldier's hands or anything like that. But at the same time, I don't think any of us would go back and make the same game, right? They exist, they're there, and if you love those, you can go back and continue to play those. But as we move forward, we are influenced by the journey that we're on in life.
I love how this game kind of addresses all that via the story. I can especially think that there's the moment of this game when you get the blades, and I love.
Hello, old friend.
Yes,
I love.
Oh my god!
And I've never cared for any of the God of War games. I played a little bit of part 1, and I didn't even try part 2 or 3 just because they didn't appeal to me. During those days, like, I didn't have a lot of money to buy video games. It was like Metal Gear for me. Metal Gear. That's all I played.
That's also a good game, though.
Sure, yeah. But yes, to go along with this Blades moment, like for someone who has no pass, so that I was suddenly like, oh my god, Kratos, the blades are back. Like,
No,
totally.
That's the thing is, like,
Right?
you made it all, like, contextualized it in a way that it all mattered, even if it didn't before to us. And I love how long that moment took. Like, I love the build up to get him.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for saying that.
Because it's that moment. It's the moment where you're like, oh, they're going there. And I was telling Greg about this. Like, I loved that. I mean, it felt like it was 15 minutes of, and it did that thing where you couldn't sprint.
Yep.
And whenever
Yeah.
you can't sprint, you know shit's about to get real. And like when you get on the boat and you go and you start seeing all the different characters and hear the voices and stuff, I had a moment where I'm like, are they just teasing and we're not going to get it? And even that I would have been satisfied with.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
because I feel like that just like it's the idea of it, but like I loved him not needing him. But then the moment he got him, I'm like, oh my God, this is so hype.
It's the exact same thing. I echo everything they're saying, and it was that thing of it was basically media blackout outside of the trailers I'd see at the trade shows where we'd have to talk about it or whatever, going down to play it. So as entering in with as little information as I had, because I already knew what I saw, I already liked what I saw. I had never stopped to dream and think. You know what I mean? I was very much like, oh, I'm gonna fight Odin and I'm gonna fight Thor. Right. But I was like, oh, that's the weapon. They're distancing themselves from that. Right. I love how, even playing it when there's callbacks to it and there's, Kratos is wrestling with what to say or what to do and all these different things and making references that obviously talk about his past or make him think about his past. It was like, cool. I never anticipated that happening, and maybe that's stupid, and maybe every hardcore God of War fan was like, "We clearly are going to get the blades again." But when it finally happened,
thanks to the ESRB, some people already knew.
Yeah, see, and so like when he starts,
really?
wrestling with this in the trophy list too, and all these other different,
the trophy
things.
list,
yeah. But when he got there, like for me, sight unseen, and he's like, I know of one weapon that can, and it was like, oh wait, really? And then he's like wrestling with it, and then him getting on, and then again like. Athena, who this is the first time I'm talking about Athena like in a positive light, just talking about it. Usually I was like, Athena, Calliope. It's just like, that's all when I'm making fun of Kratos. But for her to pop up and he'd be like, get out of my head, and like, da-da, and you're a monster. And he's like, I know. And like, to go and unwrap him and put him on. And then all of that, the powerfulness of him wrestling with it to then be mixed with us having it and having like, holy shit, this game plays completely differently now. To go from the axe, which was very methodical, I'm going to hang back and engage you this way to be like, I'm here to fuck shit up now.
And I shouldn't have assumed that it was going to be half-assed. Like, I see the blades and I'm like, oh, we're going to get this weapon for the final few fights and that's it. But it's like, oh, they have their own upgradable skill tree. Fuck, Jesus Christ.
And I felt like the game was so well designed with each weapon in mind for like the big chunks of the game that you had. Because like once I got the blades, I stuck to the blades. I feel like the game really led me in a way to be like, all right, use the axe for this amount of time, use the blades for this amount of time. And then for the final third, mix between the two when you want. I'm like, God, this is so damn
It's depending
good.
on the enemies, right? Like
some enemies. I mean, Boulder also switches between the ice and fire, forcing you to kind of do this. But yeah, there's the combat team, the engineering team, the animation team, the sound team. Like none of those creators are even remotely half-assed. Like no matter how much I would be like, we need to get some of this done. They are perfectionists. You know, they are the sort of inspiration, I think, throughout the day for me to try to be better at what I do, right? So it's amazing, like, but it was scary as hell because the blades weren't done until like the last year. So we're talking 3.5 years of development on the axe, and I'm just like, guys, we got to get to work. Yeah,
that's more of the thought that I had, and like in terms of just game development cycles and like knowing that, like how well implemented are these blades actually going to be, and then seeing them and just. This fucking game, man.
Earlier you were talking about how in the other God of War games, it's like no weapon would compare to the blades. With the Leviathan axe, it's like that thing might be the best weapon I've ever used in a video game. Like it's so fun to use. No matter how many times I threw the thing, it still felt satisfying. And like it's all the things combined. It's the sound design of it coming back to you. It's the controller's vibrations. Like,
dude, every time it comes gunk and like I feel my hand jerk back with it. Like that's how good it felt to throw and grab.
And I feel that the decision to have the triangle button be the return and it wasn't like a boomerang automatic thing. It gave it such. Agency, like you had control over these moments happening.
I actually went back and forth with them a lot on this because their first instinct was the button recall. And then they were starting to want to introduce, nobody wants to hit the button to recall. And I'm like, are you kidding? This is the coolest part of this. I feel like I'm way more in control. I can make choices that are completely fluid and completely sort of non-deterministic, right? And they're like, no, people really like the whole automatic boomerang thing. So we went back and forth, and it did become a point where I just had to say, like, I don't care. We are doing the triangle button. We are not changing it. And I think eventually then people started to see, oh no, we can do even more.
Yeah, the puzzles sort of fit in with that as well.
The forcing function basically made them go like, oh, okay, now I will go even further on this one. And part of it is that perfectionist of like, that was their first instinct. So they're like, certainly it can't be right because we did triangle button right away. That was our first like prototype, had the triangle button. So clearly that's wrong and we have to change it, right? And like, no, you hit on something amazing. So part of, I think my job also is that when we find something good is to just keep people from noodling with it in certain ways. And it's like, make this better, but don't change that part. That part is amazing, right? And it just took years for us to get to the point of going, oh no, I get it, right? Getting the right sound design in, the right visual effects in, and the animations to kind of match. Because, initially you try to prototype something, it doesn't look that great, and you have to kind of squint your eyes and go like, oh, okay, this is going to be great. For me, it's what the old God of War games, which were great in combat, and I always applaud them for that. But I never, this is what I always felt like for certain players, that's what it was. Where for me, every button press, everything I'm doing is choreographed, and I know what I'm about to do, rather than in God of War where it was like the old God of Wars, the trilogy, jumping up and spinning around and doing whatever. Here it was a very defined choice of throw the axe that way, break out the blades, kill this, go back hand to hand. Now I'm gonna smash them this way. All right, cool. Ooh, I just unlocked this new ability that I've powered up to throw ice along the ground and have that spike up. I want to use that here. Like going through to that minute detail where it was.
Becomes more methodical.
Exactly. And so many
you're
people
older and you're smarter.
And
now.
so many people talk about me and Kratos. Exactly. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Honestly, that is a little bit of that.
Well, so many games try to do that where they're like, play your way, and we give you all this stuff, and it just turns out to be like, all right, cool. I've found the two skills I like, and that's what I use. Yeah. Whereas this game was about experimenting, changing, doing different things. Having Atreus go from, I'm not going to put any of my upgradables into him. He just sits there and like yells, which is good, but I don't need him for anything. But then when it started unlocking his tree, and it was like, oh, he can spawn like a whole bunch of wolves to attack people.
Those wolves are so clutch.
Oh, okay, then all right, I'm gonna do that, and I can make his arrows cost more damage.
I also loved like the being able to play how you want. It goes all the way just to the options. I really appreciate the ability to change your controls because that's something that I wish every game did, and I feel like this game does very well. And I did change them. I ended up changing the shoulder buttons to be flipped.
Classic.
Not classic. I didn't go classic, but I flipped them so that heavy was on R1 and then R2 was more hack and slashy, and I switched the circle and X just because it dodging with circle felt more natural to me. But then also the difficulty level, being able to maybe it was that, but being able to switch whenever I wanted with the difficulty was huge because I accidentally was playing on hard in the beginning, and I was having a real tough time with some of the bigger fights, and I was like, oh man, I was talking to Greg, I'm like, this is hard. You're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, oh man. And then but then I looked and I was like, I'm gonna go to easy and see how it is. And I realized I was on hard. So I went to normal. But then as I started unlocking more skills, I pushed back up to hard, and I played majority of the game on hard, and it was awesome. Because it's like I feel like the combat is so methodical and it is so in your control that I was like, I want to do this.
You beat Cuphead, dude.
I did beat Cuphead, but then there was fights towards the end. I'm like, I'm just going normal just because I want to get this.
Yeah,
beat. But I love that I could switch back and forth.
Do you have a cheat code where I could beat the Valkyries?
I was just saying to interject. Fuck these Valkyrie fights. God, I'm like, I'm such a badass. I'm so great at this game, and then every time a Valkyrie kicks my teeth, and I'm like, God, fucking damn.
The point of the Valkyries was that sense of we will let you get there early, and we will let them whoop your ass. Right? Yeah. There is a game I played a while ago, Yid 7. Right when you come out of the first town in that game, there's this little like branching path to this gigantic brontosaurus looking creature, right? It hits you once, you have like 120 health, and it takes off like 1,580 health, right? Like on one hit, you're like, oh, cool. That's awesome. Like immediately I'm presented with something that lets me know I have a long way ahead of me. And the Valkyries were that concept of even when you finish the game and you're starting to do a lot of stuff exploring the world, you really have to be on point, right? Like these are the hardest of the hard, and some of our most devious combat designers put that together.
Yeah, I doubled back to them after beating it. I was like, all right, here we go. I was like, well, no, I'll come back to, and I'm just doing all the mist. Just I'm like gonna get every chest, get every portal, and then I'll worry about it.
It requires you to be like fully upgrading rage, getting resurrection stones, using the perfect sort of loadout armor.
Exactly,
for that
that's
character.
what I've been going up against them, right? Then I'm coming back like, what are they using? Go in, change all my stones in there to make sure I need flame resistance. I need this kind of attack. Yeah,
I killed the one in Alfheim, and I was just like, I almost threw my controller at the wall. So furious.
After you beat it?
No, I mean after like the 7 or 8 times that it like, the fucking jump up in the air, like, oh shit, I didn't dodge it. Like,
She stopped and you're like, shut up,
you asshole.
God damn it. Yeah.
We haven't even really been asking. We just been like,
Yeah, well, we got our
gushing.
questions. We're all over it.
That's
We're
true.
all part of it. Don't
That's
worry
true.
about it. I mean, what do you want to know? I mean, I forget. At the party, did I talk to you about the thing that happens when you beat the final Valkyrie?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's a good one too.
That's a good one. What are you talking about?
Huh?
Do you want to mention it?
Sure, because
Does
it's
Tim know?
Spoilercast. Tim's never gonna get there. This is way harder than Cuphead. He can't do this.
Sure.
So Freya, huh?
Yeah,
She's the ultimate Valkyrie.
she is in the myth too.
Yeah.
She is the sort of queen of the Valkyries, the Shield Maiden, and it's interesting to see that as you go through everything, all these characters have deeper connections, deeper sort of roots in everything that's happening. And sometimes you're expecting it, sometimes you're like, oh, that's interesting, right? But it's all continuing to be set up, and it's like Freya is one of my favorite characters because
She's awesome.
we've set up this origin story that has both sort of tragedy and then, kind of getting knocked down, and this feeling of like there is a mountain that is going to be ascended by her, and it's like you can just sort of feel what is that next thing going to be. And it's like what I love is that I think everybody's going to interpret a different way of where they think it's going to go, right? That final speech, Danielle Basutti, who did the sort of performance of Freya, just utterly nailed that last speech to Kratos and Atreus and set the stage for something I think that's going to be wonderful.
Was there anything? Some of this may be going into territory that you don't want to talk about because you might be saving stuff. But was there anything that you thought, fuck, I really wish we could fit this in, aside from like the UI sort of in the in-game UI stuff?
There was a bunch of stuff that I had to cut in the second and third year that we started ending up realizing it was
takes so
maybe a
long to
little
make
too
these
big,
games.
right? Like people are like, this is ridiculous. The game's too big. I'm like, come on, it's like 10 hours. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And then there was a point for a year that I was in scoping meetings every week, right? And that was just me feeling, and not correctly feeling this way. The producers are utterly amazing on this project, but I would always feel sort of embattled. Like it was like me versus the world, right? And that's just my weird conspiracy theory, fear brain speaking. Everyone was looking out for the betterment of the game, right? But I was always like, no, my toys, don't take my toys. But I think everything we did get rid of was for the better, even though it was wonderful. There's some amazing level designs that we just could not realize. Muspelheim was 2/3 larger than it was. That's a 1/3 level that we ended up with, simply because, hey, we ran out of time and we're like, all right, you know what? We can still make this. This still works.
Was it going to be the same idea?
The same thing. It was just a much bigger volcano.
Okay.
It was just huge, and the time it took to get up there was amazing, and it felt like this sort of epic journey in and of itself, but it also was fairly unrealistic for us to get done in the time frame that we had. So we made smart calls that were at the time feeling hard, but like I said, they felt, everything sort of happened for a reason.
Cool.
But from a story perspective, from a sort of mechanics perspective, and just the overall feel of the game, this is the first thing I have ever worked on where I feel like it is done, right? And that's weird because I know a lot of people say on the creative side, like nothing's ever done. You just sort of get forced to put it out. And I do feel like a lot of other projects I've had that where it's like, nah, I wish I could have had another year on it. Not only from a health perspective that I don't wish I had another year on this, but I think from just the feeling of satisfaction. Like I played through this game so many times and I've never made something where at the end I felt satisfied, right?
Sure.
That I felt like, oh, no, this is good. Like, I'm not sure if anybody else is going to like it, but like, I feel good about this. I feel like we got like the initial vision, right? The first PowerPoint I presented 4 weeks after coming back to Santa Monica in August of 2017, right? Which was like, here is the core tenets of this. And I look back on it, and I actually did a presentation to the team right before we were done that basically I pretended as if I was giving that pitch 4 weeks in. So I just stood up in front of the team. They had no idea what I was doing. And I just started saying, hey, thanks, Scott, for coming. I'm going to give you an update on the God of War game. So here's our plan for the next few years, right? Like
Yeah.
a few years, because I really did think it was going to be a couple of years.
Yeah.
Like, we'll get it done in 2 years, no problem. And it was amazing when you really look at it, you go like, wow, what we set out to do, we did, right? We sort of stuck to our guns. We fought hard and we worked our guts out. And I feel like we reached a point where every one of us was proud of the thing that we did. And I kept saying to people, that's what I want. Regardless of the response out with the people, it would be amazing that every one of us is proud. Like, I want to tell my son about this. I'm proud to tell my wife what I did. I'm proud to show her what I did. And that, I've worked on some pretty crap games in the past. And not the God of War games, but like, backyard wrestling. I'm looking at you, kid.
I remember.
Yeah, right. Roger's talking robots. And again, everybody worked their ass off on those games. They're not,
Sure.
they're not for lack of people trying. They're just, trying to make a game in 6 months. Like, not exactly the easiest thing in the world. But now I'm to a point where, like, this one, I don't know. I don't know if I can ever repeat it.
I'm
sure
so
they want you
happy
to.
that you recorded your reaction to the reviews. Like it's videos like that, those just like wholesome gifs, like all that stuff. I love that so much.
Oh,
and like
thank
seeing your reaction to it, it's so genuine that it's so heartwarming. And it's like, I love that within 3 seconds, you see your eyes go from like, oh, thank God, to, oh, really? To fuck yeah. It's so great.
I didn't expect that reaction. Like, I did it simply because I was like, I love reaction videos. I sort of consume them obsessively now, thanks to E3 2016. So I was like, oh, I should try that, right? And I mentioned to somebody, I'm like, oh, I might try that when I read the reviews. And they're like, oh, you should totally do it. I'm like, all right, cool. And I have this ritual where anytime anything comes out that reviews are there, I am sequestered. I go away from everybody, have a little whiskey and just sit and consume what it is, whether good or bad. I sort of take it all in. And I'm in a hotel in Sydney by myself. I just had an awesome day at Everleigh Station where we were casting axes and blacksmithing, and I'm carrying around 1100C crucibles of brass and stuff like that. Just imagining I'm the asshole who drops it and burns the guy who's a blacksmith. And thankfully, no, I was not that guy, but I was afraid that I was. And
Instead, it was Lucy O'Brien who burned somebody.
So, and I got back and just did it thinking, oh, whatever, I'll probably never use this.
Yeah.
And definitely, that thing was like 15 minutes long, and most of it was just me, like, not being able to collect myself. But
It was awesome.
I think it's cool. Like, it's awesome that people are responding positively,
Sure.
right? I really did show this because I wanted my son to see that it's okay to show emotion, to be vulnerable.
Right.
I think that's an awesome lesson for him. I think there's a part that I wasn't really seeing until recently that I think part of it was for my wife, that she sees me as somebody who doesn't show emotions. I try to be the calm person in the chaos, and I think that's bad. And I think maybe a part of it is an apology to her that I don't open up enough. Like, she truly is sort of the North Star for me. And I would never make it through any of this without her. And I think, unfortunately, my son hasn't even seen it because he's in kind of a sad place now. It's interesting. He loves bugs. He loves salamanders, but he's afraid of flies. And the weather is changing in Sweden right now, so there's a lot of flies. And it's just emotionally very challenging for him to see flies. It's the weirdest thing, right?
Just in conflict, yeah.
Right. So that conflict is basically saying, she's like, I don't know if I want to show him because I don't know if he'll understand that it's a happy thing. And we haven't explained it. And I said, that's all right, because I'd like to watch it with him and I'd like to talk about it. And they're thankfully coming back in May. I'm so excited.
How long have they been gone?
Since January.
Oh, wow.
I've seen them for 3 days.
Oh my God.
Over the last 4 months. And it's been exceptionally trying. I kept trying to tell her that, no, you know what, I'm going to be working a lot. It's totally fine. You guys are better off there. But there's a piece of me that's missing.
Sure.
Has been missing for months.
Totally.
And it was an amazing thing after the Norway event to see them for 3 days in Sweden, but it was also super sad, right?
Yeah.
Because
the clock's ticking. I know I'm going to go.
Clock's ticking, and like the day before I had to fly out, I had to leave it really early in the morning the next day, and Hilo finally understood that Daddy was going away.
Wow.
And he just sort of buried his head in my wife's chest and then kind of got up and went into the other room and closed the door.
Ugh.
And it broke my heart. Like, I was just like, oh, what's going on? And she's like, yeah, he doesn't like to be sad in front of us anymore. And I was like, oh, I'll go talk to him. And I opened the door. He's like, go away. I was like, oh man, that's
Boy.
all right, boy. Right?
There's a lot you can learn from this game called God of War.
It is, yeah. It's like I really feel like as creators, we do have a tiny bit of a responsibility to connect to people and perhaps share something, perhaps help elevate people just a little bit. And I think I've never done that in anything I've previously done.
We've definitely done that here.
Thank you. I mean, I'm glad that people are responding positively.
No, I think not only in the message of the game, the lessons learned there of seeing Kratos mature, or seeing Kratos deal with emotions and how to be a father and all these different struggles, that I think he comes out obviously better on the end. Like even, like, you know, because that was my fear of playing the game, is that it would always be the, you know, him not touching the boy. Like, oh, come on. And like, we address it so early on and continue to address it and continue to see him evolve, change in the way he interacts with him. But then to the reaction video, whether you knew it or not, I think that's so important to what it is to be a creator in 2018, in what it is to be a video game developer in 2018, in the way that I think it's been getting better for a while, but more and more, and thanks to videos like this, people are understanding that there are people behind the games. That you know what I mean? People are starting to understand the sacrifices that people make to make these projects and games. And for a while, I think it was something that didn't get represented really well in the media, and because it's hard to write that when you're reviewing a game. And we weren't doing personality interviews for the longest time. But you see that now, and then to see, you know, I know Kotaku put up, or maybe it was GameSpot, maybe both, collected all the other studios congratulating you, right, on how well God of War. And it's like, there's another great thing to see. It's not a console war. It's not this. These are human beings who all hang out and go to DICE and see each other in between their projects and make something awesome. And
we have an amazing community. I mean, I'm so privileged, I think, to be part of making games with the people who make games now.
Yeah.
Because we all intensely love the thing we do. And it's not that like, oh, we just love telling stories. No, we love making games. We understand that our field is different from TV and movies, and that we are just, I think, truly getting our sea legs to understand the power that we have and the connections that we can make to people. And it is amazing to see other studios, you know, be able to say, hey, great job.
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, I'm the giant fan of all of these people. So every time they make a game, I am in awe. Right, I completely fanboy out on all of these amazing creators, right? Because I'm part of this community, right? I feel very connected to everybody. So it's amazing that we can perhaps get back to a little bit of what, you know, almost like what GDC used to be, right? I keep saying this, like GDC used to be that like get together and go, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing. How did you do that? It's like I brought the game over to show Neil just because I'm super in admiration of him and everything they do over at Naughty Dog. And it was unexpected, but also expected. Of like, we went into their screening room and a bunch of people from the team came in and they're like, how did you do that? What were you doing on the texture maps there? Were you doing maps on this one? And it was like, they were asking me a bunch of stuff that I had no clue about.
You're like, no, I signed a team and they just make it happen.
And I was like, man, I really wish I'd have brought some other people here, because that is what's so awesome, is that we look at each other's work and we go, how did you do that? What were you doing there? What were you thinking? Right? And I think, to me, that's how we make great things, is that we challenge each other, we inspire each other, and we also elevate and help and lift each other up, right? That we are not in competition, right? That perhaps there is the friendly internal competition.
Sure.
We all want to be the best. But honestly, for me, I am just so enamored with ever being considered a colleague of any of these people. It's amazing. Right.
Just answer every question with volumetric fog.
Volumetric fog.
That's all you gotta say. Yeah.
Or subsurface
More
scattering.
dangerous.
For the
Yes.
longest time on the project, everybody knew I had no clue what subsurface
Do y'all
scattering
know what
was.
subsurface scattering is?
No.
It's when you could see through the ear, like when light is behind it, or through different skin.
Check out the big brain on Brad over here.
Andy used to be a developer.
Former game developer, Cory.
fantastic.
He made
Nice.
the
Worked
sled
on
in
two
DC Universe
massive
Online.
games.
I had to have that explained to me multiple times. Just like the Twitch thing, right? I am a little bit, thick. I don't connect to a lot of stuff now because I'm so heads down working on the game. But we were in the car and Aram showed me the screenshot of Twitch saying, hey, look, God of War's on Twitch, #1. I'm like, oh, cool, nice. Didn't really get
What
it.
does that mean?
Didn't really equate to me, but I was like, yeah, I'm not totally pretending. Like that half my job is just pretending I know what I'm talking about. Then I get back to the studio and I'm walking past a bunch of people and they're like, hey man, how about that Twitch thing? I was like, yeah, right on. And then Eric's like, yeah, the Twitch thing's cool. Eric Williams just looks at me. He knows me better than so many other people knows me. And he sees the vacant expression in my eye when I say like, yeah, that's cool. He's like, you don't get it, do you? I'm like, All right, no one else is around. Yeah, I don't get it. Can you explain it to me? He had to explain it to me.
Close the door, Eric.
Yeah. It's like breaking
You're
it
our Nick
down.
Scarpino. So.
Right. And he was just like, look, this is what's up. Like, it's all multiplayer games. Like, take a look at all these things here. Like, for a single player game, in an age of the death of single player games, it is the number one thing streamed, even if it's only for 1 or 2 days. That's like, take that, you know?
Yeah.
I think it is proof positive that, you know, you make something that you care about, you make something that people resonate with, and it doesn't matter. Great multiplayer games, great single player games, great cooperative games. They are consumed by people who love games, right? But clearly, I have no idea what Twitch is all about. So I need to learn more.
Twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames. Do you have Amazon Prime by chance?
I do.
If you have Amazon Prime, you have Twitch Prime. You get to give away a free 30-day subscription. We'd love to have it at Kind of
That's
Funny
fantastic.
Games.
That's totally just organically blended into the
I'll put
episode.
it in incognito mode. You can log into Amazon. I'll give your subscription to us. It'll be
That
fun.
is so
man.
fantastic.
I'll always be pitching.
Here's I want to get through some of the reader stuff. We'll go faster in a little bit. And I'm going to end at 10:30 if that works for everybody. I think you said we had us for 2 hours, right? Perfect. All right, great. My question for you is a hard one, kind of ambiguous, but stick with me.
I like these.
What is next? You said you've been talking about, you went too far, you're going to do the next game kind of thing. Is that the plan? Do you have in your head, is this now a trilogy? Is it as long as it takes? My one request is, and I think we're probably on the same page, don't do DLC.
I don't have any DLC plans.
Okay, good.
Because I wanted everything, like, I didn't want a DLC to feel like, oh, well, I'll save this for DLC. I was like,
Right.
no, I didn't save anything. We didn't leave anything on the field, man. We put it all in there.
I struggled with this, I think on a Games Daily, talking to either Andrew or Jared about it, the question came in of like, do you think there'll be DLC? And I'm like, I hope not. And then I was like, well, it's not because I don't like the game. It's that, and at IGN, we used to always say, a 10 out of 10 doesn't mean it's perfect. It means it's a masterpiece. I truly believe this is a perfect game. And I think it is so complete and so well done. And the fact that I am now, 10, 15 hours into it post credits, post story, where it's always still clawing behind my eyes that I just want to go play it. Like, I think there's so much in there that is a perfect game that there's nothing more you could add on or do or unlock in the other realms for that. I don't want that. I'd rather see your story continue the other way and let this exist as it is.
The things that you couldn't access are part of a larger plan.
Okay.
Right?
Fantastic.
That for me, we had mapped out really a good understanding of where we want to go. That doesn't mean we sort of have a script for the second game done or anything like that.
Sure.
But, I think the idea of supporting the game a little bit, a lot of people have been saying New Game Plus, like something I wanted a while ago, but as everything was coming together, it was like certain things just didn't make the cut. And part of what we built in this one was that Castlevania flip into the castle in the middle, right? That it felt like while the core story's done, I didn't want a differentiation between the core story and everything that you could do in the world. It had to feel just as connected, just as much attention paid to it, so that when you got to that point, you're like, oh, okay, this is the end of the game. Wait. No, it's not the end of the game, right? It is that feeling I had when I first played Symphony of the Night, and I was like, well, what?
Yeah.
I loved how that was done because I feel like there's, especially in the age of Marvel movies and stuff, of post-credit scenes, and people kind of know what to expect from all of that.
Biggest post-credit scene ever.
And I love that, though. And I feel like it segues so nicely where you're playing through, you have this big final battle, and then when you go through and it calms down, and you're doing that walkout, when the credits start rolling, but you're still playing, I was like, this is such a brilliant decision because it feels like it's not actually ending. You just you get the end credits, so you're that thanks for playing thing. But then it's also like, so where do you want to go now? Like, oh, let's go do this. And there's like, they're already giving you ideas of like where you should go. It's like, oh, you should go home, or you can do this, and then you go home and do all that stuff, and that's Thor. Are you freaking kidding me?
I love that it wasn't the end screen with like, you can continue Commander Shepard's adventures.
Congratulations on beating God of War.
Yes or no, right?
There's still more stories to see here.
The funny part was that I was texting Greg about this. It's like I had rolled credits. I don't know what day it was, but then 3 days later, again, I'm not the type of person to ever jump back into a game just because when I'm done, I'm done. It's like I want to move on to something else. Right. But I enjoy the combat so much, whereas in a lot of games that have these phenomenal like cinematic experiences and stuff like that, I feel like I'm moving from cutscene to cutscene because I'm so invested in the story. But I love the combat in this game so much, and it's so addicting, and it feels great that I wanted to keep on playing. So I'm playing like 3 days later after I beat it, and then I was like, oh, I haven't gone home. And then I go home and I experience that, and I just texted Greg like, now I just rolled credits, and holy fuck, what a what an awesome moment. And that's like, again, like this awesome Marvel sort of cutscene
that was the experience that I wanted, was that sense that I didn't want to put a marker on the map. I didn't want to force you. I wanted to mention it in a cinematic that, come, let's go home. And then if you choose, you have that moment of, oh, I haven't done this yet, right?
Yeah.
And then you get the surprise. Because I feel like it is only a little tease, but that little tease is so much more potent when it feels like you were the one who had the agency to go home, as opposed to like, oh, you're forcing me to go there. We had a little bit, I think people were like, oh, people aren't going to know to go home. So we really directed them to it. And there was a bit of a ho-hum response simply because they were like, oh, you forced me to go all the way back here. Yeah. Right. And I was like, that's the magic of everything in this game, is that we don't force you to do it. Give a little bit of information. If you choose to do this, you get that sense. I discovered this.
Agency.
Right? Yes. Agency and a feeling of ownership over the discovery. Yeah. Like I had so many moments in previous games that I've played throughout my life that I felt like I was the only one who found this, right? And I know my sort of logical brain said like clearly everybody else found this, but you feel so much more invested when it's like, no. I'm the first foot here, right? And that's amazing, right? It's the modern day or the past equivalent of like first post, right?
Yeah,
that feeling of like,
first,
right?
And then once you have that little fucking firestone that feels really good and sounds great when you hit the glass, like just all of that feels so great, and the sound of it, like I want to kind of do it on my own, you know. But then you find out that like, holy shit, there's all these doors that I never open. Like, it's just so great, man.
Yeah, Metroidvania.
So awesome.
And 3D,
Exactly.
It's very, very cool.
Exactly.
Also, shout out to the head man.
Mimir, I was gonna say,
Character of the game.
dude, so
Yes.
fucking
Such
rad.
a good decision to have an extra character. Me and Kevin were talking about how cool it is that, you know, for so long it's Kratos and Atreus talking back and forth, and you kind of get used to the dynamic. The moment he's introduced is just like, great, now we can get exposition in a way that doesn't feel forced,
right,
but is fun, and like can be more joking and like shit talking, and
it feels like somebody's telling you the casual story of what happened between these gods the other day at a party.
Yeah,
right?
the amount of times there's where I'm going, and I'd row up and he's still talking. I'm like, well, we're just gonna chill out.
Yeah,
we're just gonna wait.
exactly.
This is too good of a story. I'm enjoying it too much.
I'm so glad. Was there? I hope there wasn't. But was there ever a decision to add combat in the boat? Because I'm glad there's not.
Oh my god, that is amazing that you should say that, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Number one games journalist.
Number one games journalist,
right?
guys.
There was combat was one of the things cut. The boat was very controversial through the development of this project. A lot of people hated the boat. There was some loathing for the boat, and I initially wanted swimming, but you know, it was 3D navigation of an AI partner when you're already dealing with the 2D navigation of an AI partner.
Just put Atreus on a little pallet.
Right. Put
Swimming
it on a little
around.
pallet, right? And it was basically just a
riding
bridge
on your
too
back.
far, right? It was like, there's no way we can do this. Technically, it's going to be difficult. We can do it. It's not impossible, but it would mean that you're sacrificing someone else or something else. And I said, all right, fine. I'll give it up because in the boat, we can connect more. We can have them go in there and we can tell stories and all this kind of stuff. So the idea of doing that was from the beginning, but we always wanted exploration narrative or narrative exploration combat, right? And combat was the third thing that eventually, as we started to scope more stuff out, the combat became ejected from it. That it was like, no, I think this could be strong enough, but the boat didn't feel good for years. So everybody kept going, I'm looking at you, boat. This is terrible. Like, this is the one thing we don't need to do. Boat of war. But you know, there's a lot of flying leaps you take, I think, at the beginning of a project that you just have to sort of, if you believe in it, you got to push through it, even if everybody's doubting it, and then find those 3 or 4 people who are like, I'm going to make this thing sing, right? And I think that's the key to this team is there's always something that somebody goes, you know what, I want to take that on. I want to be the one to realize this. I think I can make it amazing. And it's that sort of tenacity that they fight through any of the uncertainty and the doubt and actually make something that is amazing. I agree with you. I'm glad that we didn't have combat on the boat just because I think it created that time to enjoy stories. And it didn't click for us until your sort of example happened in playtest naturally, where people were listening to a story and they arrived where they were and they turned around and just started like circling and then doing that. And they were like, does he not know how to dock the boat?
It isn't clear for
Did the
him to
button
dock.
not come up? Everyone's getting really worried, like, oh man, they get broke and it broke. And then all of a sudden he goes over and docks. We're like, what was that? We asked him. He said, no. He was just telling a cool story. So I wanted to wait. And I was like, yeah. All right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to that later.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good accent there. You got
Thanks,
that.
man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
nice
it,
job.
Greg. Because I feel like at any moment the boats could have felt like the elevators of Mass Effect 1.
Yeah.
Where it is just like this chore that you're doing, but you made it important and you made me so many times not do the next thing because, again, I wanted to hear what was going on. So
That's
I just feel like everything was executed so goddamn well. It's impressive that this game even works. Like,
I agree with that.
it blows
And
me
man,
away.
it's beautiful too.
Yes.
Like I got a beautiful TV, and man, this is my new standard for HDR. Where it's just like you need to come over and see it. It's going to convince you to.
Why
get a
not?
4K
I mean, when we
TV,
played
man.
at the thing, it was
Yeah.
It's just so nuts.
Yeah.
To see the
technical and
differences
art team
between
is
light and dark.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's really funny is I don't know if this was mentioned the first time you were here, but our community manager Joey Noel, the person who introduced her to Kind of Funny's content is an environment artist, Galen, and he worked on the game. So that was a really cool connection. And the first time I met him was at E3, and growing up in game art, like I went to school for game art, and somebody that I idolized was Raf Grassetti. And I every day in class we were looking
idolized
we
Raf
were looking
Grassetti.
at his blog, and it's just like, how the fuck does he make it? Yeah, he worked on Mass Effect 2 as well. Jesus, how did he make that? And like, he just posted something 2 days ago. Now he already has this thing. Like, the guy's a fucking like a genius at what he does or whatever. So it was
He's a wizard.
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
it was really cool connecting with Galen, talking about like, fuck, you work with, because he walks up to me and is like, oh, you work with Greg, how's that? I'm like, you work with Raph, how's that? Like, it was a really cool moment, and yeah, I
You're
thought
both
that was
like disappointed.
that's like some inside baseball kind of funny.
You're braced while you cry.
You're both geniuses.
I have been called that. I want to get some questions in here. Final
let's do
10
it.
minutes. It'd be as fast as you want to be. You know
right.
what I mean? Tin Man 215. Remember, if you want to be part of the show, follow Kind of Funny on Twitter.
What up, Tin Man?
Twitter.com/kindoffunnyvids. Says, was there any particular reason you made Kratos always call his son boy, but when there was trouble, you would call him by his name? This was a great game, by the way. Congrats on all the success. P.S. Is Kratos the world serpent? There have been fights on the Reddit about this.
Ooh, wow, interesting theory. All right, first and foremost, Boy was born first of me not procrastinating and not coming up with Atreus' name. And then I had a hook that he was going to call him by his name for the first time at the end of the game. So the reveal of his name would be the Atreus, which is where when we started realizing the Loki thing, that's when we said, oh, we're reversing now. We're going back. So it wouldn't be he calls him boy the whole time and then refers to him that. And I was like, you know what? This is great because it makes us realize son is the sort of moniker that I think is the personal connection. When he refers to him as my son, he takes, and not in the weird way of like ownership, but he takes ownership of the role of being his father. He acknowledges his son as being his son, I think, for the first time. And that was super important to have that moment click. And I think all the things that just sort of fell into place made that happen the right way that it needed to. Is Kratos the world serpent? No. Because you've seen him in the same place at the same time.
But he got kicked through time or whatever. Remember, the world serpent exists kind of all over the place. That was a big
That's
thing you guys said in your
true.
game. And then Kaz, Kaz here says in the same thing. So, as the serpent is Loki's, Atreus' son. That's in traditional myth, correct?
That is the myth.
Okay.
Yep.
Is he going to be born as Kratos dies? And indeed, Kratos being sent back in time to help them stop the true ending of Ragnarok explains the beard and the white and the red scales on the world serpent.
All right. All right, that's a lot of stuff, and most of it is like potentially
Spoilers, Nick.
Spoilers for the future.
No, Nick, didn't you hear Nick beat the stranger and put down his controller? And he was like, that's a great game. The best 20 minutes of his
Nick
life.
beat that stranger, and he put down the controller and said, I am the god of war.
He said that.
Cause I can tell you that all these things are going to be answered in the future, but we've set a lot of things in motion with this game, and we intend to sufficiently answer every one of these things.
Maybe it's Loki, because Loki loves animals.
Move them snakes.
Right?
You know? Oh, he does love snakes. Yeah, we learned that in Thor Ragnarok.
loves
By the way,
them.
you got to watch the movie. It's
I really do have to watch
Somebody
that.
buy Thor Ragnarok for this
so
guy.
funny.
Kenny wrote in to twitter.com/kindoffunnyvid and said, I'd like to hear about the Souls game's influence on God of War. I'm a massive Souls fan, and Bloodborne has been my favorite game of all time, and I was psyched to see how much the Souls-style combat is in God of War, not to mention the parry system, even the level of challenge on hard mode. Is Cory a big Souls fan? And if so, which games in particular?
I'm very little, so I'm a little Souls fan. I would say, for me, personally, there is an influence on the Souls series when I heard the story of Miyazaki sort of talking about the birth of these, right? That he loved D&D, and he couldn't read English. So therefore, he would read the D&D books and sort of intuit from the images what the story was, and that kind of gave birth to this idea that he would have a game that you had to work a little bit, right? That it wasn't on the surface level that everything was explained to you. You sort of had to work. I thought that was awesome. From a gameplay perspective, there's a little bit of that. I think Jason McDonald, the lead combat designer on this game, is a huge fan of what he calls the game of the century, Neo. And there are aspects of the combat system within several games, Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and Neo as well. And even Ninja Gaiden and Onimusha, these are all influences from our past and influences of games we're playing now. So there are definitely touches of all of these games within some of the decision-making that we have, but at no point do we ever really look at something and go, let's just make that, right? It's more like, how did I feel when I played that? How did I feel at this moment? Why did I feel like that? What did they do? Oh, that's really interesting. Could we do something like that? It all kind of boils down to like how each individual player feels when they're doing something. That is the inspiration I think we pull mostly from.
Good answer. Et Rio, is that how you'd pronounce that, Andy? Et Rio?
Etrio?
Et Trio.
Et Trio.
Says, how much of the canceled sci-fi game was reworked into God of War?
None.
Yeah?
Not a disrespect to the sci-fi game, but it was just
No, I don't think that's what
vastly
it is.
different. There was a very different direction that they were going in, and what was worked in, I think, was the collective sort of creative energies of everybody who came over
Sure.
immediately after that and just kind of dove in headfirst on this project.
A Red Room writes in and says, I think there's loads of awesome attention to small details in God of War. What are some of your favorite little things in the game? Mine are the way Kratos punches open chests and the short animation of Kratos/Atreus passing Mimir's head back and forth as they get in and out of boats.
Okay, I love the passing of the Mimir's head, but there's a funny story about the punching of the chests because throughout the project, I was trying to steer people away from some of our initial decision making, right? Meaning decisions we would have made in the past. I wanted us to try to think differently just so that we could potentially discover a new way of something. So it got to the point where, when Atreus is carving in the sand, I didn't want him to stab the knife. I was like, I think we can come up with something better. It turned out that was the best thing, and I was just being a baby about it. And the punch chest, as it was heretofore referred to as, I was saying, oh man, I love this. It's really cool, but I feel like that's sort of the way we would have looked at it before. Is there another way we can look at this?
I'm Kratos and I'm angry.
But it turned out that, again, instinct's wrong on my part, instinct's right on the team's part to kind of keep pushing that one. So I liked it, but at the same time, I was like, maybe and it looked really good right away. That was the other thing, is that somebody had really gone overboard and done an amazing job the first pass. So it's harder to change it when it looks great, right? So I was like, all right, well, I guess we're going to look at it and go like, there's no reason to change it. We won't maybe find that magical idea, but turns out we found that magical idea. It was awesome. It was a great indicator of Kratos' character. For me, the little touches are these moments with Kratos and Atreus. I mean, my favorite moment, I think, in the entire game of a little touch is when they're in the boat and they're having a conversation and Atreus says something and Kratos goes, huh. And Atreus goes, did you just laugh?
Yeah, I love that.
I do not laugh, right?
Yeah.
So good,
Yeah.
right? Those moments just felt so legitimately real. And it's like in the early portions to have a bit of his armor break down, but then come right back up, lets you know that later, right, he's going to loosen up. So when he has the wine with his son, right? And that thing, that was added at the last minute. My son and I did that like the night before the shoot. And I was like, ooh. And so we're on the set and I'm like, guys, I want to add this, right? I got an idea. And at first they were like, that's a little corny. And I was like, yeah, you know what? It is a little fucking corny. Fuck you.
I'm in charge. You're fired.
And at that point I was fearful that, oh man, did I just screw that scene up? But it was cool because it was taken from a legitimate moment that I had with my son. So it's a great moment.
Yeah, that and shout out to the first one that cracked me up was when he rotates the thing out in the middle of the lake, and Atreus is like, "That was really heavy. Did you hurt your back?" No, I did not hurt my back. Like they have such a weird, honest conversation with Kratos.
All those moments were cool too, where like Kratos would lift something super heavy, and I was just like, "Wait, what the hell?"
Well, even in the beginning, right, of like when he comes out, and like, why are these people even interested in us? We're nobodies.
Right.
What happened out here? And that was like for me as the player, like, oh, he doesn't know anything. We didn't even have to have it told to me at that point that, oh my God, no, I didn't know this.
And he's
at all.
just dad. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you don't have any experience with any other people. Dad being able to do these things, he isn't questioning it in the beginning, but as he starts to get further in, he starts to wonder. Like even when he's talking to Freya at that point, he's like, yeah, Dad's always been strong, right? It's just that very matter of fact thing that he doesn't really fully get it. And as the world gets bigger, his understanding of things starts to come into question, right? And he starts asking all these questions, as we do when we're kids. Why?
Yeah,
What's this all about? And I think that's just such a fun, organic development of this character.
A final question from a person who's definitely not me. In the questions, Andy knows how to model and texture stuff. Can he make a pot or a vase in maybe Asgard? Because he knows how to use 3ds Max and ZBrush and Substance Painter. It's definitely not me asking the question,
Right.
Corey.
Before you
Definitely
answer
not
this,
me.
fan, you can go look at Andy's Twitter last night. He couldn't even work Premiere Pro, so I don't know if it's
Fucking
really.
bugs, dude.
I don't know if you really want to bring on your team right now. You're
You don't have to
award-winning
answer
team.
that. You could say yes later.
Okay,
It's all good.
It's fine. Nick's Assassin can get the final one. What was the hardest part about making God of War?
Wow, that's an open question there.
He's
all
good
right.
at those. That Nick
what was the
Assassin,
hardest
Nick's
part? All right,
Assassin.
so
He's known for his open questions.
man, there are so many difficult challenges to making a game of this scale. I think it is the length of time you have to stay alert. 4 years of constantly being on point, right, and constantly keeping an eye on every single aspect, and that I just felt like there was a year of time at the end that I could have easily just passed out and slept for a month, right? That I was very much ready to be done. And there wasn't even a point where we had said, like, maybe we're going to release in October. In fact, actually, it wasn't really us. Other people were just telling us, you're going to release in October of 2017. And we're just like,
hey, we'll do.
we're like, that's crazy. And like, no, you could totally do it. And I just, dude, we're not, no. Right? I'm like, we'll tell you when we think we're going to be able to release. And we really didn't want anybody to know the release date until we knew for sure, right? Like, that was one thing that I think was very good about this team was, we're going to commit to a release date and we're going to make that release
You're
date.
too good. It's like, I love that you're just like, okay, we're not going to put a release date out till we know. We're going to make sure there's no microtransactions. We're going to no DLC. It's all going to be their single player game. It's like, what? Why?
I fear that you have ruined games for me for the rest of my life. Seriously.
I honestly, I just remember so much of the joy I had when I started playing games, right? That sense of, we would go to a local video store called President Video right down the street from us, me and my friend
My favorite
Scott,
store.
right? Yes, yeah. And we would rent, an NES, or then when the Super Nintendo came out, we would rent the Super Nintendo. We'd find a single game and we would play the hell out of that all weekend, right? And it, we couldn't afford to buy games, but I think at the time, had we been able to afford, we would buy that one game. And that one game would provide every single thing for us, right? We would have this amazing experience. We'd go talk to other people at school about it. We'd come back when we got new information and we'd try something else out, right? I still remember Link to the Past and this memory of, holy crap, you can put a bomb against the wall and you find other stuff inside of there, and then us just going and poring over every aspect of it. To me, that was the amazing part of the community, was the community on the playground, the community at school, the community of me and my friend passing the controller back and forth and just going through this. And it wasn't that it was any one type of game. It was just the joy of exploring, having an adventure, and feeling like, wow, this is new, right? This is something that a movie can't provide us. This is something that a TV show could not, although at the time TV was not as big as it is right now, but it was, movies could not provide us.
Sure.
And I don't know, I continue to be thankful that some people still roll with us on this idea of, we're going to give you everything. Like the Orange Box affected me deeply.
Sure.
In the sense that they gave me more for $60 than any game had ever given me. And I was like, this is awesome. And from that point on, I kept constantly telling people, like, I kind of want to have an Orange Box, right? And it isn't just a collection of games. It is what that means. It says, we love you here.
Yeah.
Right? That you are the
Your money
reason
and your
that I
time
have
are
a
worth it.
job,
Yeah.
right? And that you're going to allow me to keep being a child for longer. And I thank you all for that, because I am incredibly thankful. I don't do something in which I just sit in a room and I'm unaffected or unconnected by anybody else. I am employed because people support the things that we do, and I'm unbelievably indebted and humbled by it.
Corey, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for God of War. I'm pretty sure you've made my favorite video game of all time. So thank you for that.
Seriously, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome.
No. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Of course, this is the Kind of Funny God of War Spoilercast. If you're not one of our subscribers already, please click that subscribe button. Subscribe to whatever podcast service you're listening to. Consider going to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. As soon as we sign off, Corey's going to use his Twitch Prime for our twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames. Why don't you? You got Amazon Prime, right? Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it's been our pleasure to serve you.